So, this is going to be our last class, initially we thought Marcelo and I would together, and we will, but also we thought it would be a collective class, so everyone can participate, please. So we have a feedback. On my part, we have proposed this last topic, that is the relevance of the concept of information to studies of ethical uses of big data and complex systems. So we are in first class. I told you that we had at least two perspectives in complex systems, one from the human science and the other one from formal science. And in general, they don't dialogue. And I've been for almost 20 years now trying to be in the middle of the battle, talking one side, another side, and I can feel some progress. To be honest with you, we just finished a 5-year transatlantic project with people from France, Argentina, Greece, and here in Brazil on big data and the dynamics of opinion formation. And after many years of battling, I think we got some steps, one in the direction of the other. Yesterday, Mariana Bitt, who is from philosophy, was very happy when Marcelo mentioned the word to back. And as a philosopher, she knew what that meant. So we had people from computer science teaching philosophers that, and was a great source of happiness for us. So what I say is that I'm in the middle of this battle, and the different, even if we have different perspectives, radically different perspectives, I tried to look for the common aspects, and I found that information is the what links both the human science and the formal science in the studies of complex systems. And all the properties I mentioned to you on emergence, self-organization, and all this is part of complex systems. So just remember what we went on for the. So I'm now going to focus a little bit more on the complex system theory, which is more the formal part, mainly represented by Mitchell. And what Mitchell says, she is trying to characterize the complex systems in terms of patterns. We say that patterns are also on the other side, but what kind of patterns of information she says. So Ricardo is very busy. I have to read her quotation today. She says, in terms complex systems can be characterized in terms of patterns it forms, the information processing that it accomplishes, and the degree to which the pattern formation and information processing are adaptive to the systems. And she goes on saying, what is the main challenge is to understand the dynamics of propagation of information, this neural networks. And to understand and model information propagation, one has to take into account not only the structure of the network, but also the details on how individuals, nodes, and links propagate, receive, and process information. So we have to look bottom up and top down if we want to have a good model. But what are the principles then that govern this flow in complex systems, information flow? She suggests that first, global information is encoded in statistical and dynamic of patterns over the system's components. So this is the first disagreement because, for instance, Mohan is going to say, forget about these statistics and the encodification, datification. All this should be looked at with critical eyes. But for the complex systems theory, it's fundamental. Statistic and also randomness and probabilities are essential. Edgar Morin would say, randomness, yes. Probabilities, okay, it's superfluous, but we can take it. So that's the dichotomy. So the third principle is that the systems carries out fine-grained parallel search of possibilities. If you remember the example of ants foraging and trying to detect place where there is food, once they find food, they leave a pheromone, and with this pheromone, the other ones are coming up, just following the tracks. So this search for possibilities is fundamental for complex systems. And the systems last principle exhibit continuous interplay of the bottom-up and top-down process. So I think Marcelo explained yesterday the relevance of this bottom-up, top-down. So the question is, how do we look at big data in this context of complex system theory? This big data, I asked the question, is a difference that makes a difference? That's Wiener as a definition of information. Information is a difference that makes a difference. So if you have a pattern there and you take an element and from this pattern, and it doesn't make any difference, there is no information there. But if you take an element of that and it changes the pattern, then there is information. And he says, information we can understand as a difference that makes a difference. So let's see if big data is that situation, which is a difference that makes a difference. So the suggestion is to look at big data as a process. Marcelo just assumed that all the philosophers and everybody knows what the big data. So I like to look at big data as a process, not just as a huge amount of data that is, as we're going to see, characterized in terms of several views. So here we have, at the very bottom level, these tools that allows continuous open information that is fed from several other perspectives. That is big data analytics. We are going to see soon what is that. It has resources of artificial intelligence. It also has this data science bringing lots of information and helping a lot to feed what is normally called the big data. And then that is also including the analytics, what people are going to do with that, and also the people who are marketing and also the customers. That is always a big characterization of big data as a process, not just as a element that's traditionally characterized as having certain properties. And we say there are more than 70 dimensions. Here I mentioned just a few ones. There's volume, variety, velocity, veracity, variability, and value are considering the main dimensions of big data. Every day they discover one more important dimension of big data. But for us, what is relevant, I would like you to think about it, is that big data by itself, as Gadon says, is nothing, is irrelevant, is in a vacuum, says, is nothing. It has no value. Its potential comes when we put in a context of decision making. So it is in domain of decision making. What we are doing with that is that matters to do with all these volumes. And this, what people from the human science says, this decision making is not neutral. We have to be aware of what we are doing when we take some decisions with the data we have here. Why? So this is a very naive thing for people from that's not from computer science. So we have the big data management. This part, when we get all this huge amount of data, and they are not in general ready to be used. So they have to be cleaned. They have to, first of all, to be registered and then be cleaned. This cleaning takes a lot of time. As Marcelo says, lots of money is involved in this task of normalize or put the data in the way that is usable.
Also curating.
Curating is it? Yes.
I liked very much when Marcelo gave his class, because he called attention among some principles that he claimed there. Also, he called attention about the importance of some principles that must be respected in the acquisition recording also.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it was very interesting, this claim.
Yeah, that is the ethical part.
Yes, for the ethical part.
The acquisition is very important.
It is not so neutral.
Yeah, it's not neutral. So what happens then, when we have all this work that is very expensive and time consuming, then we give it to people that is going to be analyzed. And then the modeling starts, and the analysis of the modeling goes on. And what happens then? There are interpretations of data that are made by people with certain ideas, values, and all this. And here is important the look of the human science, just to see if we are not naive sufficiently to think that everything is neutral, because it's not. So, just to bring some ethical implications of this whole work, I suggest you to look at this book by Coleman. So, ethical implications of use of big data. It says 4 R's of big data that are reusing, repurposing, recombining, and reanalyzing data when they are collected. So let's summarize in their perspectives. So reuse, what happens when data is reused? So the data that is originally collected, that first part, for a specific purpose, then it's used again for comparable or different purposes. Let's say the example of Marcelo's sound. He collected all the sounds, the voice, with the purpose of studying COVID. But suddenly, he can change his mind. He's probably be very careful about that. But he can use for a different purpose of, let's say, train machine learning for voice detection or what else that is not for the purpose of using for this for original purpose. And what are the ethical implications of this? So the idea, quotation by is that the possibilities of reuse, particularly of data originally acquired in scientific activities, covered by the common rules, raises the responsibility that investigators have for what happens to data once they become available to second investigation. Because of the phenomenon of emergence, we don't know exactly what can happen. Additionally, it poses the question of the responsibility of the secondary investigators. So you give to somebody else what people are going to do with that, has to have responsibility for computing with or reaffirming the conditions of the data set original collections. So when we reuse the data, it may even be the same purpose. You know, some continue with the investigations of COVID, but give it to somebody else that may have lots of consequences. Repurposing. So the data set that is originally collected in a specific domain, let's use again the domain of human health, with a specific purpose, then it's analyzed with other purpose. Let's say now that we use it to identify the voice of somebody who's been in such place where there is a crime. So we have now a different purpose that police can use it to identify what are the ethical consequences. There are several ones. So reproposing, we say big data process pose the questions about the legitimacy of analyzing data acquired under one privacy context. So we went to somebody's house, collected data there, and now we are employing a different context. We are using it, for instance, to know who could be a possible person who killed somebody. So there is a problem of privacy here. And Marcelo says the lawyers have to help him. Do you want to say something, Marcelo?
Yeah, this happened that people used information available to identify a murder. And then there was a question if they had the right to do that, right? Yeah.
So the recombination, recombining the data. One data collected from one source or several sources are then combined to achieve a different goals. We get this, sometimes can be good. For instance, what happened there in Brasilia with that violent events. We have data from fingerprints, data from voice, data from cameras, and all these data are recombined to discover who was there. So this recombining can be very useful, but we have here, as I say, recombining data poses the questions about the possibility of obtaining new information not available from the constituent data set, phenomena of emergence. So we may discover that there is some person who we could never imagine would be there, it was there. So from a private perspective, it potentially enables re-identification of individuals from data that contains no identifier. So that's somebody can say, look, I didn't allow new identifier mixed in certain circumstances. So I just brought this, there are many other ethical implications, just for you to see that we are not dealing with neutral information when we talk about big data, that the phenomenon of emergence is always there, and we have to be very careful. So we look at our problem. If you remember, we have two problems. What are they? Initially, my part of my class, the first one was what's information. The second one, yes? Yeah, so it can different approach to information, and I present you just 3 or 4, but there are many more. Can this different approach to information help us to deal with this kind of situation in big data? I believe yes. First of all, because we don't really know exactly what information is, but we have advanced, and I hope you got that idea, that whenever we ask the question, what is information? First thing we have to ask us, what domain are you asking for? Are you asking at the ontological domain, epistemological, logical, methodological? And in every level, you may have a different answer. If you are talking at the, for instance, the ecological level, I think Fernando suggested that we should look at human definition when I mentioned chimera. It was said, well, if we can have this bridge between ecological psychology and logic and mathematics, it would be fantastic. But we are mixing up domains, and different domains, for instance, chimera is radically against represented abstractions. He would say, no, it has nothing to do what I'm talking about here, about space. It's nothing to do with Hemann's notion of space. This is an abstraction. I'm talking about embodied, embedded space, which is, so when we have this different approach, we would say, okay, from the mathematics perspective, okay, but now we are operating from ecological perspective. Do they go together? Can they help us to understand the complexity of problems? And I think yes. So, but it's not easy. It's a problem that people from big data and artificial intelligence have to really think about before they started to produce lots of results. So, going a little bit to these people from the systemic thinking, like Edgar Morin, what they insist is that we should look at the interdependence of the different elements in our society. That we look at the several layers, okay, to look at the formal level, measure information like Shannon, but we shouldn't forget about the other level to avoid disasters. That particularly relate to its self-organization that should not be ignored, and the effect of circular causality. So something that happens in one domain with circular causality may produce something completely unexpected, and the emergence phenomena as well. So how do we deal with this mix-up of levels of analysis of information? My suggestion is that we should have this apparently simple diagram that we are operating with lots of data at the very bottom level of analysis. We have numbers, we have colors, and they would say that colors is still not so basic, wavelengths, and then we interpret them, we give them a meaning, and we organize them, so we are operating at the domain of information. When information is put in a context, say for instance, I'm driving a car, I got the information and the data that about colors. I put in a kind of meaning, what I know, what red color means, and then I put in a context where I'm driving São Paulo State, São Paulo City, Campinas. And it's 10 o'clock in the evening, it may be dangerous, so I have the knowledge that I'm there in a place, because I got all this data, I have information, and I have knowledge that this can be dangerous. So what would be wisdom? Should I stop? We'd say, stop. It's okay, but it may not be clever or would not show wisdom if you stop at that moment. So wisdom would involve a criteria of relevance. That's fundamental for all these situations in which data and information and knowledge is involved. So what would be knowledge then? From the complex system perspective, we say that wisdom involves knowledge at this level, that's information in a specific context with a criteria of relevance directed to action. And so we integrated, wisdom integrated these 4 levels of data, information, knowledge, and then it comes at the top there. So if we combine all these 4 levels with the systemic thinking, we don't need to give a definition or be very much word with wisdom. It seems that spontaneous, it's emergent. It emerges in our behavior. So, Marcelo and I have a disagreement about the top-down, bottom-up approach to ethical problems. So, I've been inspiring myself on this work of some philosophers that are consequentialists. And they suggest that some ethical principles that are top-down, they are they can adjust to bottom up, but they are not bottom up laws. And the idea is that it says that ethical and social, cultural, political, economic contexts are integrated and codependent. So that is a quotation from Paulo. And understanding these contents and understand that they are all connected, political level, at an economical level, certain phenomena, it's critical to the effective use of data, information, and knowledge. It's the idea that we can, it's not easy. It seems that we are in a Babel tower to integrate this data, but at least as a kind of an effort to integrate them. So that's the first suggestion. It comes from top down. We are not starting from scratch to mix up things. We get the hypothesis that things are connected, they are integrated. And from that, we act in the world. So the second principle is a little bit Kantian, that is responsible action. So Pogogin, that is one adept of complex systems, traduced or translated Kantian gold principle that says the aim of complex system thinking is to act in order to produce the least possible uncertainty for responsible innovation. And so research in big data has to be done with careful and should be guided with responsibility. That is a top-down, because people at the very low level say, oh, why should I be responsible? Who cares? But in work with big data, that is this ethical principle. I'm not going to go on with this more on that, but that is what I would like to suggest to you. And thank you for this opportunity to indicate the importance of ethics in this complex system studies of big data. Okay? So for my part, I'm going to ask Marcelo to go.
I'm going to use some of your concepts in what I'm going to tell you. I believe in old-fashioned, very, very old-fashioned ways of educating people by telling stories. So people would sit around bonfires in the evening and tell stories. And I'm going to tell you a few stories. How do I do think here's my slides? I'm going to tell you some stories, and some. I must advise you tell you in advance. These stories are not for dedicated people. They'll be horror stories. No, but they are real stories. So this is the slides of my first talk on Wednesday. Blah 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 blah. And I said, well, when you have big systems with decisions that impact money and impact people and impact work complexity, people try to do work as easily as possible. There are conflicts that may lead to actual decisions because they impact on people. Okay, but sometimes this is not that clear. So I'll tell you, this is top-down, bottom-up ethics. So when you're on the front line, that don't have use for that moment for the big principles. When you were educated or when you're trying to justify what you've done, you have use for big principles. But when you have to make a decision, you have to react. Okay, and so you have to think fast. I told you about these weapons of mass destructions. I'll tell some stories told in the book. And choices that leads many case studies. So I'll be talking about a few case studies. I'll start with the first one and then I'll go to the last one. Okay, I'll tell you stories about wisdom. This one is about wisdom. It has nothing to do with big data, anything. It's just a programmer designing a flying system. Okay, and airplanes, they may find themselves in a condition called stalling. What's that? When you activate the airplane, the controls, you pull it, you're telling go to a certain angle, right? And if the speed is too slow, after you've gone to a certain angle, it will fall. There won't be sustainability for the airplane. Okay, so there was this brilliant programmer, brilliant quotes, inverted quotes, that knew about this problem, and it has this other brilliant, many quotes, idea of, well, if you give me an order to be at a certain angle, and I know the speed of the airplane, and I know it's gonna stall because of the conditions, I can do something to prevent the stall. Okay, so what was his brilliant idea? He said, well, if you're flying, you ask me to do that. What I'll do is I'll first dive, get speed, and then I'll be on the exact angle that you ordered me. Okay? And he programmed that into the airplane to be anti-stalling in that maneuver. Okay, fine. What brilliant programming, doing his brilliant programming and with brilliant ideas. I don't know if he discussed that, it was a committee, but it was there. Okay, it was there. And then there was the inaugural flight. Plane took off, was flying around, blah, blah, blah. And it was going to land, and then they decided to do an emergency thing. Well, when you land, not landing, just took a very low flight, and then when it didn't touch down, and he was going to take off, okay? So suddenly there were trees at the end of the runway, and the pilot said, "Oops, shoot!" What happened? Nose down, and the airplane fell. Pilot died. Okay, the same airplane. Oh, it was a problem. Didn't find out at the time it was a software. Same airplane flying in the mist. Okay, suddenly there was a mountain in front of the pilot. Shoot! What did the airplane do? Dived into the mountain, killed everyone inside. It needed a third accent for people to finally find out that the problem was this brilliant piece of software. Okay, that made it an anti-stalling maneuver, forgetting that this action is a reflex and may be trying to avoid. Who cares if I'm going to stall a little bit further? I just don't want to dive into a mountain or I find an obstacle. Okay, so the guy who did that was trying to achieve a local objective, a goal, like giving the right angle when you take off, when he didn't think that it could put to serious hazard in emergency situations. He ignored the possibility of emergency situations. So he has this brilliant idea for a perfect angle and killed some people. Okay? So this is not an ethical problem, but it has several ingredients of the I should ask you, do you think this is an ethical problem? It has several ingredients because you're not thinking about the consequences of your actions. You're not thinking hard enough, especially not taking into consideration security consequences of your actions. You're not taking care of all the possible contexts in which your action may be affecting other people. This is one it's not really ethical, you may think, but your actions may have serious consequences. Let's go to the last one, the London ambulances. Why do I like this one? Because I was living in London at that time, previous millennium, and I saw it in the news. And now it's a case, it's a world famous case study in many software engineering on how not to design a system. Okay, London ambulances is a system like ambulance system. This is 1990s. Nothing is automated. They tried to automate the system. It was everything held by people. People knew where the ambulances were. They got a call. I think in London it's 999. They got a call. My mother is having a heart attack. Send an ambulance. People had to know where the ambulance, what the traffic conditions were, blah, blah, blah. Too hard. Keeping people's mind. They decided to automate that. Okay? Fine. You're going to automate. You have to design the system. Now know what people do, how ambulances move around the topography of London, average speeds, blah, blah, blah. And you have to talk to people that work in the system. Okay? And they had a contract and they agreed that and we are going to interview the paramedics, the people that work in the ambulances to know how they work. Okay? So that we can design, propose a system that attends this situation as well as possible. Okay? And the following happened. You know, these programmers, they are always behind the schedule. They never deliver the system on time. They're always late. Okay? But the Secretary of Health, they know this system will be in place right in time. Okay? We don't want delays. Fine. So they had a schedule approved by the Secretary, blah, blah, blah. And there was this 2 weeks to interview the paramedics, people working on the ambulances. Fine. When they arrived, what happened? The paramedics, they had agreed to be interviewed. They wanted to help develop the system. But, you know, workers, they were on strike. Those 2 weeks were the weeks they actually started a little bit before, and then the people of the developing software said, oh, we want to interview them, but they are not there. They are on strike. They didn't come to work. And the Secretary of Health said, okay, go ahead, don't interview them. Who needs those people? Okay. 75 million pounds later, the system was ready. That's the amount was mentioned in the newspapers. It's also in the software engineering textbooks. And the system was put in place. And it worked for 3 days. And it started losing calls. And people started having heart attacks, calling the ambulance 11 times and not coming. Because they didn't understand how the work was to be done. They supposed that the paramedics work in a certain way, and they work in a very different way, to which they had no idea because they had not talked to them. So they implemented a system in an idealized environment, and it was all wrong. And after less than a week, they put the $75 million in the dustbin, threw away all the money. People had died. Everyone was angry. Paramedics were angry. The population was angry. The secretary was angry. People were angry, but the secretary was, I don't know, London politics. And it was dumped. And it went back to the good old manual after a few people died in this process. Sorry for the horror stories. It happened. I read this in the newspaper while it was developing. Okay? So this has nothing to do with ethics, or does it? What do you think? Not to interview, not to be aware of how things, the environment in which you're supposed to operate. You just guess the way people work. And is this ethical? Well, the others are much more
related to this thing. I'm telling you stories. They don't have good endings. This story, sorry, no Cinderella here. So there is one that is very, very famous, the automated learning for parole decisions. Okay, parole decisions are very hard. You have people put in jail and they behave well, and then they can apply to a judge to get conditionally free. So say if you don't do anything bad, you can stay free. We don't want to pay you, so you can work. It will be better for society. It will be better for anyone. You'll be on parole. Right? Fine. Well, judges have lots of things to do. They cost a lot. Why not give it to an AI system? The problem is that the AI system was trained on, but there are many problems, okay, but I'll tell you a few. The AI system was trained on backward decisions, okay? And can you believe that? People are racist. And the backward decisions carried with them racism. So what happens in that automated decision for parole is that if you are black, you have 4 times less chance of being considered parole than if you had the same kind of offense and you're white. That's a fact. Okay? So machine learning had data which contained a lot of racism, and it was repeating the pattern. So you're not teaching the system to behave ethically, you're just repeating what you've done in the past. And your past is not so beautiful. Okay? And this is discussed in any law school. Every time I went to a discussion with lawyers, that's the first case they tell. Yes?
I just was wondering why the race information was included in the database.
They didn't put racist information. They put the information they had. And the information they had was racist. Okay? They had the past cases. Judges were racist. The population is racist. So you train a system with that information and you have a racist system. End of story. Yes?
I think the question is actually.
Why wasn't it curated?
More like
No. Why
like
the information for the prisoners had a field saying their race?
doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't need to. So if you come from a certain area,
Okay.
okay? Or there are many other information that actually imply in almost certainty that you're black.
The county where
Yeah,
you came from.
yeah. The neighborhood in which you were
Yeah.
arrested, blah, blah, everything. Yes.
There was a questionnaire that the inmates had to answer, and it asked things like, when you were in school, did you get involved in many fights? And usually, if you come from an impoverished neighborhood, this kind of thing. And so there are a lot of questions that are very subjective. There was one that I said, well, I would be denied parole if I answer this. Because there was a question like, do you think that it is right for a person to steal if they are hungry? So, there's very subjective and it is racially biased. You don't have to put race there.
Worse than that is that this software was a private company. They claimed industrial secrecy and they didn't want to show how the software was developed or what the data they put in. So the system behaved badly, and the company said, no, I'm refusing to show how it's done.
In the first few days of ChatGPT, I saw a tweet from someone that said that asked the ChatGPT to basically write me a quick statistical diagram to determine the worth of a person. Then it has a case. So the person's white, you have this value. The person's black, you have this value, which is smaller in the case of the person being white. The person's a man, you have this value. The person room, this value which is lesser than the
Yeah, well, this is when you detect some hidden biases in the data that wasn't there. So yeah, but here is explicit. Yeah, so you didn't actually have to ask for the person's color, but the system could infer it. It's like what happened with artificial intelligence and the recommending system. The recommended system learned that if you recommend radical, you get more clicks. So it had a system that was optimizing clicks, number of people following messages, the amount of time people spend on Facebook or whatever your social network. And the system learned to provide this kind of radical information that was good to increase.
Correlations everywhere.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Good and bad. Yeah. The system had no ethical considerations, just what increases number of clicks, click-oriented economy, and you get this fractured society that we have. Okay. So this is a famous case. I mean, I'm not inventing this. This is all in the literature. I didn't put the references, but I should. Yes, Vader.
Could you say something about using credit history?
Yeah, I'll do that. Crediting. So you want the zip code in as input for credit concession is, if you like, the zip code is kind of telling in which neighborhood you live. So if you come from a neighborhood that the system learns that people there don't pay much, they have credit problems, but you are okay, you never had a debt in your life. But because you live in a neighborhood where your neighbors or other people that live there, so you'll be penalized and the credit won't be conceded. Just because you live there. You did nothing wrong, but well, you live with your cousins that they are bad people, or not bad people, bad payers. And then you're penalized by that. Okay? So this is very unfair. So no one died here, but it's very unfair. And that's what people, when she mentions this story in the book, Kathy O'Neill, the Weapons of Mass Destruction, said, it's very expensive to be poor. You have to pay more. Get worse interest rates, etc., because of this effect. I told you I was telling horror stories here. And they are true. Oh, I hope they are all true. Now, using credit history for job offer, you know that choosing a person to fill a position, if you've ever been interviewing people to fill a position, is very hard. Okay, in the end, you only have someone that's good in this way and someone that's good in that way, and you don't know how to decide. Okay, you do a short list, say 3 or 4 people that are really good in many ways, and how do you decide between them? How do you explain to if you are a hiring company, how do you explain to your bosses or whoever hired you to do that job that you've chosen someone good? Well, may take their credit history. Take the one who has a better credit history, never was late in payment. And they've done that. The problem is you can be very unfair. The guy who has the worst credit history may be the one that needs most the job. And maybe the one that will perform better, will perform best, just because of that. But you are using a very unfair way of deciding. You're using an information that absolutely no correlation with what is your goal. And they will say, I have chosen, oh, this is the guy one because we made a short list and he has the best credit score. So this is the credit score. You're using a totally independent. So no, take a Boolean algebra, one is negative only if the conjunction, okay, right? Totally independent, and use it as a very unfair way of taking a decision, automated decision in this case. Yes, please.
Yes, when you were talking about the parallel decision, you mentioned that there is big history of like discrimination and racism. Like, and I think that points that the problem is in the society, and maybe we should make society less racist, so we have less biases, Then the data.
But if you use training uncurated learning method, you are sure to be reproducing those biases. That's the problem. If you collect big data from everywhere, you collect the bad parts of everywhere as well, will come unavoidably towards you. That's the problem of using big data. There are parts of society that people want to improve. The ideas change. Many films that I watched as a kid would be a no for parents like me today. Okay? So society goes on, and if I take data from that time, it would be very bad. So using big data in this sense is a big problem. You have to curate it. You have to, of course, if you're using big data from voice, you won't get the biases in the sense that you are affecting people. But like this one of credit offer, it's just laziness in the part of the person that doing the job selection. Why don't you do your job instead of using a totally unrelated criteria for the selection in case? Maybe you should use it reversed. You should use the person with worst. That can be also you'll be helping someone, but that can be also not optimal for the case that you do. You should not use information that's totally unrelated to the task that you need to perform. And this you have to take care when you design the system. What data you're gonna allow in? In the same way that I had to say, oh, I need to throw noise in. Before I did any implementation, I had to collect the noise. So when you design the system, design what comes in, you have to take these considerations in focus. Otherwise, you may be developing an unfair and harmful system, and you may be blamed later on because you didn't pay enough attention. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Yes, please.
Okay. We have two cases. In the adolescence, we have ideal situations with forward-looking. In the Paulo case, we talk about backward-looking situations.
Yes.
This reminds me of one important problem in ethics of artificial intelligence, which is what kind of moral theory should guide the kind of programs that robots are really programmed.
That's when you need the top-down approach. Okay, you need that to train people. But people, when they are designing, they must have these considerations in mind. So I cannot add things that will discriminate against people that can be used to reproduce past problems that we want to erase from the society, etc. So that's where you need the big problems. You need the big problems to educate the people because they make quick, fast, and the only way they will make quick, fast decisions in the right direction is if they were educated to think about that. So first you think of where you want to go, you educate people, and then make them move. So that's the moral here. And if you say, oh, I don't care about that, you're already saying that these decisions, these things that you want to change, they are not really important. I'm just saying, well, what the hell? I'm not going to do that. It's too much hassle. Too much. You know, there is a book by a famous French philosopher, Albert Camus, called the Chute, the Fall. It's the story of someone walking along the river, seeing a person jumping in the river, and he considers jumping inside to save the person, but the water is too cold. Okay? I could help him. The water is too cold. Yeah, so you have to take decisions. What's more important? You feeling warm and pleasant, or you saving the life of someone else?
I think it goes beyond the collective decision process to reflect us. For example, if I am a moral deontologist, they are consequentialist, what kind of robots are you going to program? Is it the one that follows consequential decision making, or the one that's going to be deontological? In a perfect ideal situation, this is what you think. So, the moral biases who serve as responsible for programming the system in the first place is something that comes to the fore when you're discussing choices.
I would love to have a problem like that between the consequentialist and then what's the other one? The deontologist. But the problem is the people that don't care and the people that care. That's the real problem today. Okay, the moment we get to that problem, we have evolved a lot. That's my opinion. Okay, that's totally my opinion. Yep.
So, this bottom-up approach is very good. I think it has to do, if I'm understanding, with when you have a very bad consequence, because you have like to drive away from that consequence. But what happens when you have an ethical issue that has a reward? For instance, it's very difficult in like marketing systems to know what creates an effect on the system, like feeding big data on an AI. It's hard to predict.
But now we know that the system learned that feeding radical information to people make them click more. So, and if you don't do anything, it means you don't care. You're more interested in getting people clicking more because then you can sell more advertisement. So you're saying that selling advertising is more important than having a fractured society. Yes.
From a bottom-up perspective, is there any way to stop that? Because then there is a reward from the Unesp.
Well, you have seen many people quitting Google. People that work with ethics in Google, they say, "Oh, you're just doing ethical washing, just pretending that you care." But when it's really time to do that, you just say, "No, don't bother." Okay, that's more or less the criticism that you've seen. Okay, yeah, people, ethical people, they pay dear for daring. There is also this problem. He asked first, sorry.
I don't know why we have to take the bottom-up approach and the top-down approach as completely conflicting.
They're not. I try to show
I think
that they're not.
They are not. And even,
But if you don't have one, if you don't have both, then you have a faulty ethical system.
Between the principles you accept as valid for the actions, or at least when you start to do something, because if you don't know, for example, what leads to you take the old case you brought, like all of them have certain kind of unfair consequence, and so without knowing what is unfair, you cannot say that they are.
Yeah, we have to decide what is fairness in the first place. That's why you need the top down or the big ideas.
You need.
But if you don't train people to react quickly to those things, there's no point in just discussing ideas and people say and go away.
Yeah, but they have to adjust. I think that the problem is that to think that the top-down approach is always unrevisable, but they are not.
No, they are not.
We are always discovering new principles and take them in the top-down.
We have, say, 10 years ago, who would think that the clicking society, you remember when Facebook was liberating people, creating communities, etc., and now are the bad villainy guys that know that they're doing bad things and don't change. Okay, so there was a big evolution in perception of what's a social network doing in this last, at least in some communities. Some other communities will say, "Oh, you are just a communist," or whatever. Brazil, every time they don't like you, they call you communist. So I don't know what communist means. Yes.
I was thinking about the other way around, in the sense that perhaps we can use big data or neural nets to find hidden social biases in the data we collect. You know, this case proves that there are a lot of bias in data that we haven't given a thought before. And in a social perhaps in the environment of social sciences, would be really useful for, to use neural nets just to find, relations hidden relations in the data that we haven't thought before, right?
It's a pity that Renata is not here because we have a project to do that. We have a project to take the proceedings of judges in cases of rape and identify bias and racist actions by the agents of law, by the judges, by the promoters, by the lawyers, calling this person this thing and the other. It's horrible. We have a project for doing that. And it's been very hard to get the data because all these officially this runs in secrecy. So only special cases you can get access to this. The problem is they don't want to say that the people in São Paulo have done what they have done. Okay? So yeah,
Sorry, Mark.
brilliant idea, but how do we implement it?
Yeah, which big tech is going to put the money on it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's the universe desk.
Okay. So we are 2 years waiting for the data to be free. Just it's a non-project so far. Just an idea. You had a question?
I was just going to make a quick comment. There's something like what you mentioned in medicine, where they discovered that AI could detect small cell cancer in X-rays, which no one knows how it does it.
Yeah,
And
that's normally the
they
case
try
with
to
AI.
reverse engineer the process to find if radiologists were seeing something they, in some level, could identify as small cell cancer, but they weren't consciently making the judgment. Just
There is no end to problems. We are learning, okay? We do something with a good intention and then we learn that there is a problem. You have two possibilities. Keep on doing business as usual or try to change, okay? If you keep on doing business as usual, this is a statement that you don't care. Basically, that's my point of view. Okay? And if you try to change, you may change for worse. Who said that you know the solution? Okay, must be careful there. So, just to finalize, these are the stories. I said I'll tell you stories, and there are horror stories, but they are described in the literature plentifully. There are many others. Oh, there are horrible stories that left the luggage in the runway in Austin Airport, but that doesn't scare anyone. Oh, you lost the luggage. Who didn't? I brought you the coordinates. Okay, many others. So preventing mass destruction is educating and training. Education is the main tool. I'll go back to that to promote frontline ethics as a habit formation activity after you've decided from in the top down where you want to go. Okay, or you can do it incrementally. You have to educate people. So not educating, not training, not doing anything is already a statement of I don't care. It should be parallel with all other education activities that with each people involved in these activities. So programmers, software engineers, AI, machine learning, data collectors, blah, 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 etc. And it's also a boss duty. If you have a company and you don't educate your people to take care of important things, it means that you don't care. That's it. Thank you.
So the message we would like to leave you think about the real richness of this interdisciplinary perspective. I'm very happy and interacting with Marcelo. We disagree with some point, we agree with others. And for instance, on the top-down approach to ethics, for instance, the Kantian perspective, you shouldn't lie. We saw here lots of interesting stories about the logic of lies, calculating possibilities. And of course, this is very appropriate for our situation now. We say, if you are a Kantian and somebody says, police is coming here, your friend, you know your friend is going to be killed by the police. The police says, your friend passed here. If you are a Kantian, you say, here, no. Here, no. It's over there, you know. So you have to find a way of telling lies in a way that follows certain principles of friendship, honesty, responsibility, always in a falibilist way. And so I thank you all. I learned a lot here. And I'm going to listen several times in your class to understand how to measure these probabilities and the importance of accepting that we are living in a world where lies do exist. And we cannot ignore that. So we cannot ignore that. So in a way, the traditional ethics should be activated. Marcelo is right with practical things, but we cannot just throw away this important collaboration that philosophers, particularly consequentialists, brought to us with revisions and always in a falibilist way, ready to change your mind if we notice that there is a failure there, that we didn't go where we would like to go, and there are errors. Okay. So, thank you very much.
Very much. It was a wonderful pleasure. If you have any questions? Yeah. I don't know. Do I have time? Yeah, we have time.
Some observation about top-down ethics and bottom-up ethics. So I think that when we are talking about big companies, big tech, the top-down ethical principle is profit. That's it. And about bottom-up principles, they can be encoded, they can be regulated, they can be part of good practices, they can be fiscalized. So I agree with the professor that the bottom-up principles are more important for us to think about now because, as I said, we can put it into law. The companies can put those principles in their good practices and educate their programmers to do this stuff, while the top-down principle is profit. We won't change it to Kantian deontology or utilitarianism or anything like that.
What is a bottom-up principle?
I'll tell a story about this one. I read, I think, yesterday, about it's about a American company suing Fox News. Why? Because Fox News had some of the reporters in Fox News had their personal opinion that Trump's claim that the election was rigged was false, was baseless, basically. And they sent texts to one another saying, well, it's crazy, crazy, crazy. And in the beginning, Fox News was actually the first one to announce that Biden has won in Arizona, which basically meant that he would win the election. And then what happened in the next 2 days, the audience of Fox News plummeted. So they started saying live that the election was rigged. They were starting reproducing and amplifying Trump's lie or Trump's opinion. Okay, and they put the blame on the company that was doing the adding up the election results basically, and now that company has managed to get those texts from one reporter to the other and is using it to sue Fox News as a libel against the company. Fox News said we are to be blamed, and I'm suing them for damages against my reputation. So Fox News had one behavior, and then when it saw the audience dive, it changed its opinion because with this radicalism, it's not only Facebook, but Fox News also wanted to be have a captive audience like that. You don't have to believe me, it's in the newspapers. Okay, so I'm just reproducing. This is one case in which money is important and has changed the company behavior on air, not online. Just these things happen all the time. If you start paying attention to this, you have no rest. Sometimes you can say, okay, I've seen enough. I want to do some logic here. But it's all over.
And but I think that the problem is that we are discussing are more meta-ethical problem than ethical ones, because
Meta-ethical, yeah. I'm gonna learn something now.
No, because we are discussing what kind of approach we have to adopt to deal with big data problems. Not what is the right thing to do, but what kind of approach. So it is not first level, actually, it's second level choices. And so, for example, sometimes you say that you use the example of the guy, of the pilot that decided to
Not the pilot, the programmer that decided to make
the programmer.
the airplane dive.
Yeah, so this is an unprudential or decision of the program, not an immoral one, because you cannot see.
But he did not think of the consequences. It's the same kind of reasoning.
With a moral consequence.
Yeah.
So the problem that sometimes, for me, this is the point that we have to, in defense of meta-ethical views, we have to define precisely terms and the things that we use to discuss about the ethical things.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the ethicists says that we don't have to worry about meta-ethics, but I believe that the way you brought the problem, we have to worry too much about meta-ethical problems.
If you have to, I think you have to worry too much about the consequences of what you do.
And also,
That's
The programmer wanted to do something that would reduce accidents and thus reduce deaths.
No, he was trying to, in my opinion, he was trying to optimize a local order. Say, I want to make the airplane do what I think the pilot wanted to do. And what the pilot wanted to do is put the airplane at a certain angle. When in many cases, in important cases, the pilot just want to get out of the situation, and he didn't consider
But
that.
stalling causes accidents.
Yes.
So he wanted to do this to avoid accidents, and he ended up creating more accidents, more deaths. The principle was there all the time. You didn't have to think about it. It was the same.
yes, yeah, this is okay. We are not talking about that exactly, but how to implement in the system.
It's more about the application of ethics. I mean, perhaps it's more a social scientific problem in the sense that this is our purpose, and how can we optimize the implementation of this ethical approach?
Yeah, but to implement, you have to have a precise language.
Yeah, definitely. But I think.
And so this is not the ethical.
No, but the thing, the ethical approach exists. We are not questioning which, if there is an ethical question here of which one is the correct approach. Like the approach is still consequential, this perhaps, but which we are liking, we are wanting to like implement this in an optimized way to encompass situations that we hadn't foreseen. And
Yeah. This is
No, that's because we are discussing not just the okay, you know what is the right thing to do, but how to implement the right thing to do. And so this is a problem of second order, not just.
All I have to say is that when you're next to the bonfire, that's what happens. People starting talking. Yeah, the guy telling the story. That's what I know. Please, it doesn't stop here. Okay? Yeah. So this kind of discussion is what I know. Thank you. Yes.
If I understood what not is like more approach like like you have an actual principles so if you meta structurally may apply like you're coming from top down so you have to evaluate the consequences of many ethical principles. So this may be meta but bottom up you have top down that you're evaluating but like you have the challenge you have to do something. It's built. So I don't know if it's a mathematical problem. It's more, it's a frontline problem.
Okay, but we don't know what we have a problem to decide, but we know that we have to reduce unfair results, okay? We know that. But to implement a way to observe how the system will do that, we are not discussing anymore the what is the right thing to do, how to implement it. So we need to have a better language or a better concepts, a better way to demarcate the things.
Yeah, but we have already accepted the almost realist stance that there is an ethical principle to be applied. So
Has accepted what?
what? Sorry, realist.
We have accepted
on
what?
an almost realist stance regarding that there is an ethical approach that should be pursued. For instance, the consequential stance. We have to like the approach is almost a given, and we are like trying to find the better way to make it so like to encompass a lot of situations that that will be ethical. So I agree with you that there's the problem of implementation, but I think there's the consensus that which aspects, which approach will be applied. So in this sense, it would not be so more almost an empirical and scientific thing to be made. Like this situation didn't work. We have to.
I think we are getting next to the point where we have to write papers on these ideas and see the discussion going on. Okay. So, well, thank you. Well, I really wanted to foment this discussion, and I'm very glad. Go on. Go to a bar, buy beers, and keep on discussing. Maybe you find some solutions to problems. Yes.
What about your course?
My course. Oh, sorry. This is a marketing corner. Yeah. Well, so I finished with the advertisement. Oh, so you can see my course will be on first Monday after Carnival. I decided to do that because in Brazil, Carnival will be not a good time to start. So it's called natural language neural processing in Portuguese. The course is given in Portuguese. The data is in Portuguese. You can do it for free, except if you want a certificate that you've completed all the tasks. There are 6 modules, 6 tasks, 2 for grading tasks. They will be graded, and if you need a certificate, then you have to pay because that's Coursera. Otherwise, if you just want to be illuminated and see my face, I had a beard when I recorded that. So well. Please go ahead. It's free. It's there. So and tell the people that the course is on. A word of mouth thing is. Thank you very much. Well, with that.
I won my part.
Yeah. Well, you get your 10% later. Okay. Thank you. So that's all. Thank you.